All right, greetings, everyone.
Morning.
Welcome to our real deal discussions with expert advice from local experts. And today we're going to be talking about unemployment compensation and all of the questions and challenges that are surrounding that situation, because that's changed a lot. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started with everything. If they are not already, I would ask that you please mute your microphone. That will minimize the background noise and interference and make sure that everybody is able to hear their information and hear it well. If you have a question or a comment at any point during the session, submit that using the chat function. We're going to be keeping an eye on that, and so we will get to as many questions as we possibly can in our allotted time. If you miss something, we are recording the session, and it will be posted to the Daytona Chamber's COVID-19 resource page. You can find that if you go to our homepage, daytonachamber.com. There's a red banner right at the top with a link that says Learn More, and it will take you right to that page. There's some terrific resources on there, including some other webinars we've done over the last week or so. So we've kind of got 4 key topics for today. We're going to go through some tips for businesses to ensure their employees qualify for unemployment compensation. There's some nuance in how that's handled. Unemployment compensation access for self-employed individuals, that's a new piece with the legislations that's been passed. Short-time compensation, as well as some tips for first-time applicants or folks who may not have had to apply for many, many years. We're certainly seeing an increase in those numbers. So with that said, we'll get the show on the road, and it's my pleasure to introduce our guest for today's webinar. Robin King is the president and CEO of CareerSource Flagler Volusia and has been since 2013. Has spent more than 2 decades with the organization, and her experience includes project management and analysis, grant writing, procurement, as well as leadership and economic and community development. So really brings a well-rounded expertise to a variety of aspects of this conversation. So Robin, thank you very much for taking, I know it's a crazy, crazy time for your organization, and sharing with our members a little bit.
Certainly. Thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate being able to share information with our businesses so they have relevant information as current as we can get. You know, a lot of stuff has happened in the last week. There was a very large legislation written very quickly and put out very quickly. So there's still a lot of guidance that we're waiting on for every piece that's in there. So it's coming out on a regular basis. So to answer your first question, you know, who is qualifying for unemployment? So anyone who has been laid off temporarily or permanently and has wage earnings for the previous 18 months qualifies for state reemployment assistance. That's what the state of Florida calls unemployment insurance or reemployment assistance. FloridaJobs.org is where the Department of Economic Opportunity has all this information. So in the state of Florida, there are no unemployment offices. We contract with GEO, and so we have a lot of the information that we're sharing. And under normal circumstances, we have computer banks that people come in and use to apply. Those are not accessible to the public today. We are providing services remotely where people can call in, and we can help either walk them through screens or help with PIN resets. That started effective today, and just helping take some of that burden off the call center at the DEO level. But FloridaJobs.org is where they continually are updating information as well, especially now around this new piece that came from the CARES Act. So today, if someone applies for unemployment in Florida, the maximum is $275 a week for 12 weeks. It's a total of $3,400, I believe, something like that. So this CARES Act is going to add $600 a week and then extends all of that for 13 weeks. So the 600 goes on top of the 275, and it's still, all that application is still happening in Florida Jobs, is where they have the connect button to get into the system. They're continually upgrading that as well. They have never ever had this kind of influx that's happened. You know, in previous times, it was a gradual build, and this is a lot faster. I believe I heard that this morning nationally the numbers have tripled on who's applied for unemployment. So that would be the same then for gig workers, 1099ers, small business owners, if that's what they want to get into, and going into that. There is a program that is not specific to the pandemic, and that's a short-time compensation program. That is something through DEO that allows for them to reduce hours, continue to keep them on the payroll, and have their hours subsidized, if you will, through unemployment insurance. It's a plan that must be approved prior to the business taking any action. That again, it goes into the Connect system to apply, and it's meant to, if someone's hours are going to be reduced at least 10%, but not more than 40, to help retain your employees. I mean, they are our best asset at any given time, and to let them all go and then rehire is two costs, right? There's the cost of letting them go, and there's cost of rehiring later. So the intent of this is really to retain your best, and it can be a hybrid if you have to lay some people off, but want to reduce the hours of some others, you know, that can be done as well. It's much of a hybrid. The last thing I'd like to say before we get into some questions is, if any business is facing this dilemma, we are more than happy to come in and work with them and share this one-on-one with them. To also, they could Skype us in so we could talk to their employees directly and walk them through what the processes are, what services they may be eligible for. So when someone's laid off from employment, they are what's referred to as a dislocated worker. And dislocated workers are eligible for training dollars and for a lot of services through our centers then. And we want to get that information to them so that they know that if their jobs really are being disrupted permanently, that there is support to help them transition into what their new career might be. So one of the other things that's happened, the state has removed some requirements around receiving unemployment. One is there is no more week waiting period that someone applies and it would start immediately. There traditionally is a work requirement where someone has to work register or look for work while they're receiving unemployment. And while that's not in place for temporary workers, it's now not in place for anybody. They still can, but it's waived. Really thinking that either one, the employment that they might be seeking isn't available today, or that if they're going back and really intending to go back to where they were, that's been removed. Let's see. I said a lot of information coming out very quickly. This does not have to be necessarily for someone who was laid off recently. I mean, when I say recently, like just in the last few days, this could go back to when someone had been laid off previously. And again, because searching for work today is very different. We do continue to post on our social media anything that has to do with job openings that we're aware of. If you look on, we are on Facebook and Twitter, and we're doing some things on LinkedIn as well, but not as much. So if someone's looking for the green boxes, that's where we're posting anything that has to do with job openings that we're knowing about. Again, just sharing information, not necessarily someone having to come through us. Though we are available remotely, and we have a job bank or a phone bank where people can call in and ask some questions. Or even, like I said, if someone's deciding that this is the time for them to change careers or get a new direction or upgrade skills, then we're available for that as well.
Okay. Robin, let's touch on real quick, for the folks who are with us or watching this recording and are in human resource or leadership positions within their organization, and while perhaps their revenue streams are requiring that they are not able to keep everybody on board, they want to take care of their employees and make sure that they are able to get the assistance that they can. What are the things from a business's perspective that are the 2 or 3 key things you need to make sure you do this so that your employees are eligible for the support they should be getting?
So to receive reemployment assistance, any of that cash, they can no longer be an employee, whether it's a temporary or permanent layoff. And they can give them something. The companies are not required today to do any WARN notices. That has been waived. But to give that employee something that says, due to XYZ, that they have, so we have some businesses who really want to take care of their employees as much as possible. So they're continuing their benefits and they're keeping them on the payroll. If they're doing that, then that employee is not going to qualify. And that's why the short-time compensation program is an option for some businesses, that way they could still take care of their employees, that they could reduce the hours to some. There is some payroll tax implications to that program, and so they need to be very mindful when they're going in and making sure they're asking the right questions around that. But again, taking care of their staff, so they could Skype us in or Zoom us in now, or whatever that is, so that we could have one-on-one conversations with their employees, letting them know this is what their next steps are.
Gotcha. Okay. One question that has come through in our chat is that there are a lot of people having a hard time getting through to the state to file for unemployment. And the question is, any tips? And I kind of think short of adding a lot of people or some really significant bandwidth, that's probably going to be a challenge for at least the short-term foreseeable future. What have you been hearing from the Department of Economic Opportunity and how they're trying to deal with such a sharp, quick increase in applicants?
So there's a multi-pronged approach onto providing some relief. Patience there's not enough these days, right? Because everything I've just talked about, that's all in that Connect system, and that's a statewide database. That's not something you can just go in and tweak like we can with so many other things that we're accustomed to. It's much smaller and can be more nimble. Off hours is where we hear successes. Like I said, we can now do local PIN resets, so people don't have to call into that. The phone number for that is 323-7052, and that's something that we have gotten permission and training from the state so that we can at least provide that support. I know that they've been closing down the Connect site from time to time, doing some upgrades to it. They did that for about 3 hours yesterday. Off hours, and when I say off hours, I mean like 2 o'clock in the morning kind of as one. I know that CareerSource Florida with DEO is looking at how to, because right now Connect is not mobile friendly. So anyone who's doing this on a tablet or on their phone, it's a struggle. So they've been working on those kinds of tweaks as well. They've been authorized, they being DEO, to hire I think an additional 100 people. But again, it's still just the people that are going to drive them to this database. The other thing, if they call that number I just gave, the 323-7052 number, we can also help walk people through. If they're in the system but they have questions, then we can help them navigate some of those screens. And actually, we've been becoming very proficient using Teams so that we can look at someone's monitor if they give us permission to do that, so that we can actually help them. But we have some very knowledgeable staff that really knows what's on what page and that kind of thing. If someone is applying, traditionally would not be eligible for reemployment assistance because they're 1099ers, gig workers, that kind of thing. Small business owners as well. That's the system they still would go into. And then once the regular RA is denied, then they could still qualify for the money that's going to be coming down for the It's called the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA, and that we have not yet gotten guidance. That was effective yesterday, so we need to get people in there as quickly as we can because there are timelines when that's going to be good for.
Right. For those of you that are joining us, if you have questions, submit those through the chat. We'll get to as many of those as we can throughout the session. One question, Robin, that actually came through our Facebook event for today's session was, you had mentioned the phone number about getting a PIN reset. Is that an instantaneous reset, or is there a delay in the period with which then they would get their new PIN?
So there's documentation that's required to verify who you are. And Fred, I noticed I'm going to speak up. I know I can be a bit soft-spoken. I'm sorry. So I'm not trained in it. I did not attend the training yesterday because I don't qualify to do that. I can find that out and so that you can share that. But it's my understanding that when someone calls in, and because they really want to make sure that whomever it is has access to that system is that person, right?
Right.
It's the time, you know, anytime there's crisis like this, there are those who are going to take advantage of that situation. And it's not unheard of for someone to go in and apply for unemployment under somebody else's so that they get the cash. So when we're doing PIN resets, there's a piece in there about verifying who they are. And so I'm not sure how long that takes or how that's working, but it should be something that's fairly quickly.
Okay, very good. I know it's unfortunate you have folks who take advantage of situations like this. And the other, I think, challenge we're all dealing with, and you guys have done it at CareerSource. We're in the process of doing it at the Daytona Chambers. Now you have a lot more people working remotely. So it's not easy as picking up a phone maybe and actually reaching somebody in their office. So that's a challenge.
You can pick up the phone and reach us. We have, I'm blessed with a tremendous IT team that we did learn really quickly that headsets were on back order. And so we got the earbuds with the mic. So when someone calls the 323-7052 number, they will get a person during our operating hours. If it goes to voicemail, it'll be returned as quickly as possible. But it just depends on the influx at that time. But where we generally work with one operator who answers our phones, today we have 7 people answering our main number, and then they in turn are switching that over to the phone bank.
Right. Yeah, I meant more, not an indictment of you guys not picking up the phone, just as we're all working remotely. It's a different dynamic now in terms of getting information. And while it would be nice to say, hey, we've got all the kinks worked out and we know there's not going to be fraudulent applications and that kind of stuff, we know that is going to happen because some people have apparently too much time on their hands. So in going through somebody who either has never had to apply for reemployment or maybe hasn't done it for many, many years because they're well established in their careers with their organizations, what are some of the things that they kind of should have ready or be thinking about or be prepared to provide through the process of applying for benefits?
I'm not, excuse me. There's all kinds of ways that we're communicating these days, right? When then things pop up. The first thing, if someone has applied before, that means that there's probably still some kind of a PIN number in there. Again, because we're not the unemployment office, I don't really know what that list is. So if they call the 7052 number, that's where they could ask that question. What is it that I need to pull together? I know it's going to be the proof of employment. It's going to, a variety of other things. Those wage credits, where they worked, their earnings, that kind of thing. Actually, my goddaughter was laid off yesterday. She got in there, first time she ever did unemployment, it took her 20 minutes. Timing was just right after they had upgrade, they had been down, so there wasn't a lot of people on there. So it's not normally a cumbersome thing. There's more documentation if the employer is going to argue it on the other side, saying no, which is not what we're saying at this time.
Right. questions from the audience? Anybody chatting? The resetting your PIN, Fred's having a question about making sure he understands what that for the phone number. That's calling it if you have a PIN number in the system. Is that correct?
So that's for resetting. I mean, it's for resetting the PIN. It's also for the kinds of questions that you're asking, Ken. You know, what do I need to have? If somebody's in the system and, you know, in Connect and they don't understand a question, they can call us as well. We are not allowed to fill out applications for people, but we can help guide them as they're going through it. And that's the number. We have state employees here in our career centers, and that bank that's at the 7052 number are those employees who are very familiar and are accustomed to answering the questions that people have if they're normally walking through our doors.
Gotcha. Another question coming through in the chat to me: is there a big difference between a layoff and a furlough as it relates to unemployment compensation or reemployment?
Not today. Normally the difference is that someone who's furloughed or temporarily laid off, they do not have to do the work search requirements or work register requirements where permanent layoffs do. But the permanent layoff, that has been waived at this time. It's been waived from March 15th through May 8th. No, that's the wrong one. March 15th to May 2nd. And then we'll see what happens, you know, May 2nd.
Yeah.
It continually changes.
You know, I can't imagine having to try and keep track of the volume of information that you guys are dealing with in different circumstances on a daily basis. And then to have something as unprecedented as this, where all of a sudden the rules are changing from day to day, from hour to hour. Bless you and your team for all the work that you're doing to try and keep up with this, because it really is, you're dealing with people when they're in probably a most vulnerable position in their life and career. And I would imagine that presents some of its own challenges for you and your team.
There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of frustration. A lot of people are scared because even if, you know, one of the things that we're dealing with are those individuals who have been temporarily laid off in hopes that things will recover in the next 2 weeks. Now it's going to be probably the next month. You know, projections are out even further. So it's our job to just very calmly help people get to where they need to go. And like I said, what our primary focus and function is to help people find employment. So, you know, we have a host of workshops, for example, on our webpage that help someone if they decide they're going to brush up their resume. You know, if they want to learn how to interview again because someone hasn't interviewed in a long time or whatever that is. So we have a really good bank of online workshops for individuals that are just really going to take this time to maybe refocus. If they're looking to go back to school, we can have a conversation with them about that. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of possibilities, and it's not a one size fits all. Everyone can find that next path, but it's not the same as the next person.
All right, question coming in. Did you talk about self-employed, real estate agents, etc.? That's as I understand it, and I'm even less knowledgeable than someone like you who's dealing with it day to day. But that folks who are self-employed, you mentioned gig workers and some your 1099 type folks that are eligible for some assistance. What are the key pieces of that? What do they need to do? I would imagine documentation's different for them than for an employee who's on getting W-2s and regular paychecks and stuff.
So the reemployment assistance that's available for the gig workers self-employed, again, is not the state money. That is just going to be what's coming from the CARES and CARES Act. They still fill out the same application at the state level, and then it's just going to flip them over. So we've had some experience with that after hurricanes when disaster unemployment assistance becomes available. So they go into today, and this may change because we still haven't gotten guidance from the state on what they're doing with this. But today you would go into the Connect system, floridajobs.org is where DEO is posting all their information, and they would go in there and apply. The one question I don't have an answer to yet, I've posed it a couple of times now to the state. There's something in there about being an officer of their company. So they have an S Corp and they pay themselves a salary, but they're also an officer. So there's something about being an officer that's a specific question, but I haven't seen anything yet as to whether that would prohibit them from receiving this. So that's one that, because it's not state money, it's the federal money, and it doesn't appear that there's any restrictions on that federal money.
Okay, all right, that's good to know. I'm always the optimist, so I'll try and flip this a little bit so we can talk about a little, maybe some brighter things. Is CareerSource hearing? I know I've seen some things on social media, and obviously take all those with a grain of salt. But there are some organizations that, based on the nature of their work, are needing additional people at this time, as opposed to laying off and reducing their staff. The demands of their work are such that this is when they are needed critically. Are you hearing, are there organizations or are there things that are companies that are hiring large pools that might provide avenues for folks who are looking to transition from a position that they got laid off from?
Yes, we've had a number of companies, and again, on our social media, this is where we've really been pushing that out. We're continuing to help with on-the-job training, which helps businesses offset that upfront cost. We are continuing recruiting, but remotely. We've been looking at virtual job fairs, which is something that we've done in the past and we might do again. But right now, it's just when any company is letting us know that they have job openings, we're just posting it out in social media so that someone doesn't have to come necessarily into our system to know what that is.
Questions for Robin while we have her connected here. Obviously, we're pulling some time out of a time period in her work that has just gone through the roof, and knowing that she cares as much as she does about helping our residents in our community, it's important for us to make good use of her time and get her back to the things that she needs to be doing and reading and getting that guidance, and in some cases apparently hounding people to get you answers on your questions so that you can assist folks. Is there anything, while we're giving some folks one last opportunity to submit a question, is there anything that we hadn't touched on yet in our conversation that is a key point that either we can help you get out, not only for the audience that we have with us today, but those that might be watching, to a wider audience, to say, hey, this is information you really need to have at this challenging period? All right, not seeing any other questions there. Robin, any last minute tips from you for key points or information that needs to be shared far and wide with everyone?
So our business services representatives are available to talk with any business that's looking like they might have to face doing this, right? And so pick up the phone and call. The number for that actually is 323-7001, and ask to speak with the business services rep for your area. Because again, like I said, it's not a one size fits all, and the better businesses really do want to take care of their employees. And to pull us in just to have a conversation doesn't mean that that's where you might have to go. It's, the short time compensation program, for example, we just received training on that to know a little bit more, to help businesses just understand the responsibility that they would have to make sure that plan is put in place before they start reducing hours. And if a business is really facing having to lay off, then we can come in again virtually at this time and tell those employees what services they are eligible for.
All right, very good. Well, not seeing any other questions, we'll put a wrap on this. Robin, thanks so much for taking the time and
thank you for the
sharing with folks.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's a critical key part of the Chamber's role is to get good, credible information out there. And I would encourage you to, if you have questions on reemployment or unemployment, don't take them from a meme on Facebook or Twitter. Go to a credible website, come through the chamber, go to CareerSourceFV.com. There's a lot of, yeah, go to the source to get it, and not just take, well, I saw somebody's brother's cousin shared this on Facebook. You're probably, it's like, there's a reason they play the telephone game as a learning tool in schools. It starts at one end. By the time it gets to you, the message is going to be entirely different. So thanks so much again, Robin. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Again, we've recorded this, and as soon as the video is converted, we'll have that posted on our COVID-19 resource page. And stay tuned to the Chamber and CareerSource, all our social media channels, for all the latest information. Best of luck to everybody through this challenging time. Let us know how we can be a resource, and we wish you all well.
Thank you. Take care.